Because the White House and the Kremlin, the Royal Russian Orthodox Church, and fundamentalists like Robert Bork appear to my eye to have colluded on the British manuscript, which has taken me a lot of time to research. It seems very likely that what I call Leapfrog, which is the talent show, the international talent show, the billionaires, and the power centers around the world. Leapfrog cooperated in a series of genocidal acts, feeling that the ends justifies the means. It's an old European fascist concept. And I've explored the role of cinema. And what this is about, since it was a script that explained why the survivors of the Holocaust of World War II would pull something as um, man-hating as a genocide. I explored the narrative they announce as their agency, and I want to describe what I consider a leapfrog of resistance. The leapfrog of um, power are people who operate behind the scenes of the nation state in the money centers and on yachts, and they canoodle. And even though there are loggerheads, taking down the weak and helpless reduces for them some of the stress on resources, which they are not shy of hoarding. And of course, this creates a power center and resistance to them. So we have a axis of resistance that's choreographed by the leapfrog oligarchy. And it's just role playing, which is to say, their material dialectics pertain to institutional tax and spend policies. Back in the 80s, I was exploring Buckminster Fuller and the Hunger Project, which proposed to make life meaningful in a peaceful Gaza and like places and build down against the population explosion through education and management with foresight. But the leapfrog oligarchy had a royal plan called Two Virgins, which was going to make immoral by a caustic attitude about abortion. Turn on the faucet and then turn off the faucet with the AIDS attack, which allowed them to sit on high as moralists while taxing and spending for the nuclear bombs, the catastrophic Cold War that saw personality cults emerge in the West, like Ronald Reagan's, and entrenched powers in the Soviet bloc. Vying for influence in various governments around the world. while secretly agreeing that no one could fight them both when it came to some population density extreme measures. And they, through my location, Pittsburgh Public School location, they put on a Elizabethan theater, masterpiece theater of a rock world dimension. Now, the reason I call what I'm exploring today Leapfrog of Resistance is because the International Court of Justice, of course, is the last hope for apprehending these perpetrators. And history, at least, should record what we know about them. And the Leapfrog of Resistance is based on a timeline about how I learned what I learned that jumps back and forth through history. So the leapfrogging isn't territorial or quasi-political. It's leapfrog through time and space in archival retrieval, primarily in cinema and politics, cinema politics. So, for example, starting with the 1980s when Reagan was in office and being very totalitarian of demeanor, and AIDS happened, I began to be very worried. And there was a notorious incident where the Jeffin Corporation took Reagan's side in a secret operation about John Lennon, which was their Elizabethan masterpiece theater presentation about racial equity in the media arc of colors, which was planned. I mean, evidence has surfaced here in Tacoma, the religion of the Soviet Union, that shows the Soviet Union scholars were party to this. And if you jump all the way back to the early age of cinema, you find that Sergei Eisenstein and Disney were friends. So much so that Sergei Eisenstein has a manuscript in publication about Disney. So you look at the dawn of cinema, you discover that D.W. Griffith's terrible racism, which was used to reassert the power of the defeated after the Civil War, were the same exact studio men who made Ronald Reagan's World War II films, which are full of pro-Axis sympathy. So the Axis reasserted its power after the World War II through the same agency, the same lobby, the same exact men as the defeated Confederacy reasserted their power. And jumping ahead to the discovery of a super story with the elements of explanation, choreography that went on in cinema, chronologically clocked to the execution of JFK, in which you have a series of settings in Dallas that day. And in the movies, prior to and during the same, not after, the same action, they choreograph from setting to setting in cinema what they're executing. And this is an idea that goes all the way back in the sweep of time to the dawn of cinema, D'Annunzio in Fayum, and the counterfeiters, the acolyte of D'Annunzio, Luigi Freddi, who introduced D.W. Griffith to Mussolini, whom D'Annunzio mentored just as he mentored Mussolini. So the Italian futurists are this long arc through time. Squarely in 1920, the milieu that gave us eventually Mick Jagger and Jackie Onassis, Diaghilev, Nureyev, ballet dancer, ballet Russ, found a group of people who were in Cubism. Picasso was making set designs for Stravinsky, and fourth dimensional ideas that were outside of the framework of Einstein. It was before Einstein's relativity theory, by about 6 months before. P.D. Ouspensky and the Gurdjieff cult, who continued to influence gangs like David Bowie's gang and the Beatles. But if you go back a little further to the 19th century, you have men like novelists, German romantics, who were followed by men like Henry Bergson, media theorists. And the influence that they have comes out in the 60s with the romanticism of the soundtracks that were being released, the music industry. Now, I have an advantage when it comes to watching the movies. Because I'm deaf, I use closed captions, so the images are accompanied by the text. So I've been able to detect simultaneities that other people don't. And of course, they planted their Houdini black box on my house. Let's be very clear. The evidence shows that Reagan killed JFK and faked his own assassination attempt. I was there. They planted the black box on my house. It's not legally proper to say that the thesis discredits the evidence before you look at the evidence. The thesis arrives as a conclusion after review of the evidence. In other words, it's the only conclusion you can reach once you look at the evidence. And of course, they've done things like attack me cosmetically. Mel Gibson put out a movie about Jesus, and they've depicted me as in an Alamo against the qualitative forces of musical fiction relief, because they're sickening people. And what you have to deal with here is an organized crime that's international in nature. It's an internationally coordinated organized crime. It doesn't want to look after ecology, doesn't want to contribute meaningfully to our schools, doesn't want to make progress in equity and distribution, does not want there to be some other explanation for intelligent design than genocidal power broking. And that's a lot to accept. To me, people think, oh, you're utopian. That's what Pittsburgh used to always say. You're a utopian individual, a naive idealist. But what they were really doing was conscripting people into an idea that discounted the Elizabethan theater operation that they were performing and putting on at my expense as an individual. And it took a good deal of social work to grapple with the old money forces of clanism and mobilized unionism and black power that knew what was going on and had hidden the truth from me, making it very difficult and punishing for me to get the truth to you. So, leaping around through time, what you see is a backwards and forwards timeline, a group of timelines in which, for me, it happened that I saw and detected what they had done. and I went back into their theories. Their theories were not in the room behind the revolving bookshelf. The crime they committed was. Their theories were out in the open, and they went through stages. Cinema as an art form developed through stages. What they did, which is in their films, the backgrounds of the films, the planning of the crime, takes the form of their intellectual stages of development. So their intellectual development in the art theory of cinema that develops over a series of periods, say 20-year periods, from the 20-year period before the turn of the 20th century to the 20-year period after the turn of the 21st century. So you have 7 or 8 20-year periods. The form that their development took, the stages of development, are matched in the semiotics that they use. And of course, there's a principle at work also beneath the surface, which is the soundtracks. And music served as a soundtrack for reality, in which they argued the qualitative royalism of a higher dimension, to discount that they were eradicating ordinary people by caprice. I mean, nobody can justify what Nosferatu is doing to Gaza. It's just a capricious act of rapine. But you'll find that the Jews who are in trouble have queer attorneys. I mean, it's the old song and dance on that level. I think that what you need to do is study the leapfrog chronology of how this came to my attention and then was verified, and understand that the Houdini black box is alluded to in the background of international cinema, as well as the soundtracks, including the rock era of in recording studios. Quite a few people in England and back in the USSR knew about all of this. And we can, at the very least, make clear that they should be brought to justice by our academic leanings and conclusions.